we're back. Go Blue, everybody. We got a Minnesota preview ahead. And is Michigan the best team in the nation? Coming up next on Michigan Wolverines Live. And another episode of Michigan Wolverines Live now on Tuesday nights. It is October 3rd, 2023, and my name is John Diadamo, and I'm going to take you through the next hour of Michigan Wolverines Live. It is the 110th episode. I'm going to ask everybody to please like, subscribe, and share with a friend. If everybody brings in one person, two people, we double, we triple who's in here. And because we are going to be covering a lot of ground, just a reminder to send a super chat if you have a comment or question. We do have a special guest today, so I don't want to waste any more time in bringing out Daniel House, who's the founder of Gophers Guru. Daniel, thanks for joining us tonight.
Hey, thanks for having me. Big week. Not every day you get the potential #1 team in the country coming into Huntington Bank Stadium.
Hey, well, I appreciate you saying that. That's very nice of you. So, we obviously wanted to bring on an expert on the Golden Gophers and kind of looking at your perspective on the team. So, just so that everybody knows, it's going to be 7:30 p.m. Eastern on NBC, which I'm still getting used to games that aren't Notre Dame on NBC. So with Michigan favored by 20.5, that's quite a bit considering it's an away game for Michigan. But Daniel, what's your kind of initial sense of this matchup here for Minnesota?
Well, it's one of those games where you have to execute every possible play that you have. You have to play a perfect game almost, not make mistakes, take care of the football, limit explosive plays. And Minnesota throughout the season, it's been a roller coaster ride in a sense where the first 5 games, you really experienced every type of win that you possibly could and every type of loss, where the first game, Nebraska found a way to win, game-winning field goal right at the end. The unknowns of a first game against a new coach, the 3-3-5. Play Eastern Michigan the next week. You just run the ball all over the place. The breakout game for true freshman Darius Taylor. North Carolina missed a ton of opportunities in the passing game. If you just execute a few plays here or there in that game, you potentially have a chance to win. They gave up a few explosives early, settled in defensively. They ran the ball well, did some cool things in the run game, but just not everything came together in that game. Then Northwestern, you have a 31-10 lead in the fourth quarter, 21 points. And it's just uncharacteristic lapses. I mean, zone drop mistakes, biting on a double move, getting beat over the top going into halftime. The offense didn't sustain drives in the second half. At the beginning, they had like 3 drives that didn't span more than 2 minutes. That put a lot of pressure on the defense. Special teams couldn't down a punt inside the 5 and really needed to get 1 first down at the end and would have won that game. So just a crazy ending. And then last week, trailing 17-14 at the half, the offense was able to perform pretty efficiently, I thought. Finished drives with touchdowns, had 5 of the drives past Louisiana's 40-yard line and with touchdowns. First half, it was just pass rush lane issues. Zion Chris is just able to escape, scramble, keep some plays alive on passing downs. But Minnesota found a way to play, a cleaner game offensively. I thought early down efficiency was good, which put them in some favorable short yardage situations. So playing a game like this, kind of what I'm saying is Minnesota hasn't put together a complete game in all 3 phases yet. So if they are able to do that and limit the amount of explosive plays they've been allowing, just timely ones that have impacted the flow of the game, I think that's going to be the big thing as I look at this offense being able to, Michigan run the ball, J.J. McCarthy's accuracy out play action over the middle of the field. I mean, you see some of the numbers that you're looking at in the film that I'm watching. I'm like, this is going to be a daunting task for sure.
Well, and for those of us who remember A.J. Henning and who completely shook our head at the first game Northwestern played, where it seemed like they didn't use him. And when they did use him and they threw it to him on an out route or something, he would either overthrow or underthrow him. And I'm like, this guy transfers to Northwestern, and this is what happens. But in the game against Minnesota, AJ Henning did get 11 receptions, 82 yards, a touchdown, and so that was a pretty solid performance from him. So those of us who kind of try to watch AJ Henning and really all of the Wolverine alums, as they go to their new team, was interesting. But just kind of diving into the offense a little bit more, what I noticed from the Louisiana game is so when I think PJ Fleck and I think offense, and I think of those teams with like Kirk Shiroka and like 2019 and Tanner Morgan beats Penn State and all of these types of things. Like that's what I think of when I think Minnesota. But when I look at the stat line for the Louisiana game, what I noticed was the run game had 51 carries, right? 201 yards, 3 touchdowns. Zach Evans and Bryce Williams obviously had big games. But so it seemed like you were really getting it done on the rushing side, whereas with the passing side, just seemed like not as much going on there. Khalif Manis did have a nearly perfect game in terms of completion versus attempt, but got a pick. And yeah, just if I'm just looking at the two sides, it just looked like the run game was a bit more successful. Do you think it could be a little bit more balanced when you play Michigan? Because that Michigan's run defense is probably one of the best in the entire country.
Yeah, just looking at Michigan overall, I mean, the defensive front being able to rotate so much. I mean, I'm watching, it's just like a NASCAR pit stop. It's like you got Jalen Harrell, you got Derek Moore, you got Mason Graham hasn't been playing, but, Josiah Stewart rotating in. I mean, a lot of people would take him as a primary guy at their program. Chris Jenkins in there. Like, I just watched the defensive line. I go, this thing is very, very talented and deep, and one of the best defensive line groups rotationally in the country. But then you look at Jesse Minter's scheme, that single high base defense with some blended cover 3 and 1, some quarters, cover 6 combination stuff.
Very multiple D. That's what I always say. Multiple
that
D.
Quick post snap rotation where you're just rocking and rolling right at the snap, making it hard for the offensive coordinator to figure out what type of coverage you're going to get, and the quarterback has to ID that. You bring in some simulated pressures, some blitz stuff dashed in. I was impressed with the nickel blitz stuff with Sainer still. You got to be ready for a lot of different looks that you're potentially going to see. And Michigan hasn't really had to show a lot of those in these games yet, just because of how the game scripts have gone, taking control of these games. And then in the fourth quarter, you got a lot of players that you're rotating in to get some reps. So when I look at this game, Minnesota, running the football is going to be a tough task. You're going to have to be very creative. I thought that's what Minnesota did a good job against Louisiana with, being able to do a lot of different things in the run game, mixing in more counter looks, trying to get numbers advantages, looking at what they did formationally. I wrote a site on the website today about motion and formation and how that helped them in the run game. Minnesota didn't have Darius Taylor, who's been the breakout player, true freshman running back. Potentially maybe comes back this week, but you have to remember Minnesota's got a bye week next week and then a huge game with Iowa. So will he come back and play? Not sure, but Zach Evans comes in the game and plays extremely well. And Minnesota, Darius Taylor had won the previous 3 Big Ten Freshman of the Week awards. Zach Evans comes in the game and he wins the Big Ten Freshman of the Week as running back. So Minnesota's had 4 in a row and 2 different running backs do it. So running game is definitely bread and butter, but Minnesota, the passing game, they have been, play action, bootleg stuff last week was very successful, able to hit on a smash concept with a corner and a hitch, holding the corner and then hitting Daniel Jackson in the end zone. Those crossing routes, the play action crossers, getting the ball out in space. Corey Crooms has been a very nice addition for Minnesota from Western Michigan. A shifty, dynamic slot receiver who has very good hands and can do some things underneath. Minnesota will blend between that play action game, but bring some RPO into the mix as well. They've been sort of mixing between those two conceptual wrinkles. So Minnesota, definitely going to have to be balanced, try to maybe stack some things up, get some switch releases going to try to get guys open, motioning players open, and then, dashing in the running game, maybe some screens. The advantage they have, maybe that people aren't talking about as much, is Kirk Shiroka is the offensive coordinator at Rutgers. He used to be at Minnesota. Yep. You got Joe Arsimiak's the defensive coordinator at Rutgers. So they just played Michigan. So Minnesota has the relationships there to maybe find out some things. Hey, what would you have done differently? What things worked systemically, system-wise, they're very similar. So that's something to watch for as Minnesota enters this game from a preparation standpoint.
What's your take on Kalik Manis and his ability to run the football? Because I did see he was able to score it looked like a rushing touchdown against Louisiana, or at the very least, he was able to run the ball a bit against Louisiana. I will say that normally rushing quarterbacks tend to be a bit tougher for us than ones that are more pocket quarterbacks. It didn't seem to be a problem last week against Nebraska's quarterback, who was able to usually do that. What's your take on what you've seen with him so far? Compared to Tanner Morgan, obviously being there 20 years and finally running out of eligibility. What has that transition been like?
Yeah, Ethan can definitely keep it in the zone read occasionally, scramble around. He had, a couple plays where he's been pretty aware to step up and scramble. Actually, it's an aspect of his game that's been not talked about a lot, is being able to, find those lanes, step up and, move the chains occasionally. So he can do that. The play action game, the bootleg game is something that Minnesota's been putting in, allowing him to take advantage of his arm strength. I mean, the big thing here is like developing pace and tempo as a quarterback, where it's like, he has a lot of arm strength, so he's throwing that ball really, really hard. Developing some touch on the throws is something that I've been working on. Pocket movement, understanding the drop depths, the footwork, all the things that you have to do with the quarterback position. So Ethan has like the arm talent to make all the throws on the field. Now it's like putting all the pieces together and executing those plays when they were available. If you watch the North Carolina game, there's a couple of big crossing route hits that Minnesota dialed up, timed up perfectly, weren't able to hit those. You think, if you're able to connect there, there's two plays that are potentially touchdowns. Another one where you got man coverage, a tight end delay, and the ball's thrown behind. And if it's thrown out in front of him, it's probably a touchdown. So Kalik Manis, I feel he's played maybe his two best consecutive games back-to-back here. So I feel like he's starting to – people forget he didn't have much high school playing experience, lost a whole year due to COVID, then comes in here, doesn't play a whole lot, comes into games, gets some experience. But starting games, putting together those experience, those reps where you're going to see a lot of different things. He has these first 5 games system-wise, witnessed a lot of different coverage things and schemes that he hasn't played against before. So I feel as if he's starting to really get a foundation underneath him here and maybe get in a groove, because I would say last game's maybe the best game Kalik Manis has played at Minnesota, just managing everything that you have to in this offensive system.
Yeah, I mean, it does look like he's made strides, and you normally see that when you're starting a new quarterback, and they go through the first couple of weeks of growing pains, and then they start to get a bit more of a feel for it. So that'll be something that Michigan will need to contain, obviously. And from a defensive side, of course, you've had games where you were able to keep teams to very few points, and I think, of course, of the Nebraska game where they only scored 10 points the entire game, which is pretty impressive. Obviously, you kept Eastern Michigan to 6. So you had games where clearly you were able to contain teams. Not the next couple, not as much, but definitely you clearly have some players who were able to make plays. So walk us through kind of how the defense has been going this year, and maybe some impact players to watch out for.
Yeah, the big thing on the defensive side of the ball is Cody Lindenberg, probably their second best defensive player, one of their elite tier defensive guys, a linebacker, got hurt a week before the season started, hasn't been able to play, and he was a catalyst player in that defense, getting things adjusted, making a lot of calls, filling the shoes of Mariano Sori-Marin, who'd been with the program for a long time, just a player who was the glue of that defense and the heartbeat. Cody Lindenberg was ready to slide in there when you're at practices, seeing Cody, the strides that he made. He was on pace to be one of the best linebackers in the Big Ten. Like, the expectation level was extremely high. Well, he's unable to go, so you're playing second-year linebacker Maverick Baranowski, who has limited reps, limited experience. So he's been up and down in games, getting used to, some of the things you got to do with zone drops and, eye discipline, not taking the cheese in certain areas of your game, just learning and going through that player development process, which is expected. I mean, that developmental process is not linear. It's going to be up and down. And when you're playing a second-year player, that's definitely impacted the defense a bit, just the communication. Trayvon Jones, a late ad from Elon, a cornerback, has played well, but a player who arrived late that's trying to get chemistry with everybody. And then defensive line-wise, I think they've put a big emphasis on improving their pass rush this offseason. You definitely saw a huge jump in pressures already, getting into the middle percentile in the FBS and pressures. Jalen Logan Redding, Ja Joyner, both good pass rushers. And then Anthony Smith, who led the team with 5 pressures last week, freshman player who, when you watch the game, watch for zero, like body type wise, he's one of the best overall players Minnesota's had just for upside wise on defense in recent seasons. He's someone who's really emerged, but Tyler Nubin is the most impactful player on that defense. Being able to see the field, instincts, break on the ball, put him in coverage disguises, let him rob routes. He had an interception last week, a huge performance against Nebraska. Tyler Nubin is just the heartbeat of that defense overall, an athletic playmaker who can really change games for Minnesota.
Wow. And he's looks like it's his 5th year and 20 tackles, 3 interceptions already on the season is pretty good.
Yeah. I mean, he's been the player that, everybody's been rallying around on the defensive side of the ball, and you got to have those impact players. And that's definitely his role. I mean, you look at Minnesota's defense, I think it's just been timely explosives that they allow, just eyes in the wrong spot, get beat on a double move, or, defense just gets out of a run fit occasionally. They've tightened things up as games have gone on, maybe some slower starts, and then found it as the game went on. And then in the Northwestern one, it's like the fourth quarter, the offense wasn't able to sustain some drives, the defense making some uncharacteristic plays. I think this game, what I'm watching for against Minnesota's defense is these teams, when Minnesota's in their zones, they're cover 2, the Tampa 2 type of defensive structure. Teams seem to hit with the 4 verts, try to stretch the seam with the tight end. So I'm looking at like Loveland. How is Minnesota going to have answers for him? Post wheels, hitting the seam, getting the ball over the middle to Loveland. I'd be watching that matchup. I don't know how Minnesota is going to approach the schematics of this game. I have a few theories that I'm going to post on the website this week, but I think the middle of the field is what I'm watching. JJ McCarthy, you look at the numbers overall, I've been like amazed with 10+ yard passes over the middle of the field, like 80% completion percentage, 6 touchdowns, very effective in that area. And then the play action game is built right off that rushing attack. So, diverse run game with so many different wrinkles between gap and zone principles and all those different things. Like, Minnesota has to be disciplined. I would expect Michigan's going to come out with a lot of misdirection in the run game to try to get Minnesota's eyes in the wrong place, and then, tie the play action game right into that. The guy I'm watching for in this game's Loveland, potentially as a player that could have a huge game for Michigan if they scheme it up how I think they do.
Yeah. Colston Loveland is one of those. I just call him he has that clutch gene, right? He's somebody that JJ McCarthy has a lot of trust in. And when no one else is available and it's a 3rd and 9 and it's a must get, Loveland somehow gets it, right? And so I would definitely be watching out for that if I were you. And AJ Barner too, from a tight end standpoint. He's starting to come into it as well. He wasn't as much of an impact player the first couple of games, but he's starting to make some catches and doing what I kind of expected him to do coming as a transfer. And so I'd say both of those. Roman Wilson also, you don't normally think of Michigan as a wide receiver school. You think of Ohio State, a USC, schools like that. But I will say Roman Wilson has been making some absolutely out of this world catches, right? The one last week at Nebraska where he literally grabbed the JJ had to throw it at exactly the right spot, and then Roman Wilson literally had to like grab it where this guy's helmet was in the way, and like it was a very awkward grab, but like he was able to somehow do it. And that's a throw that very few wide receivers in college can make. So yeah, there's definitely a lot of talent on the offense nowadays compared to the, when you think of Michigan as more of a defensive school. It's been coming along. So, just there was actually on our show last night, Big Ten Live, we had Minnesota Dave, who's a big fan of Dave Valensky, who's a big fan of Minnesota. And I asked him this question. I'm curious to see what your take is. But for Minnesota to win, obviously it is at TCF, it is at your house, right? So you have home field advantage. What does Minnesota need to do to beat Michigan?
I'd say early down defense is a huge factor in this game. I mean, you can't be in a position where Michigan is ahead of the sticks. And when you look at the numbers, you look at the film, Michigan is able to do that consistently and then put themselves in that position where everything plays off the running game. You're able to influence the second level and then hit those play action crossers and then, get those guys like Roman Wilson involved. I think actually is a player to watch in this game. Minnesota puts Darius Green into the slot and passing downs, and then brings Aiden Gooseby in the game occasionally. So keep an eye on Roman Wilson out of the slot in those situations. Minnesota has to get Michigan backed up, and then their pass rush has to be effective in those situations. Michigan hasn't been in those situations offensively and passing downs all that much. So, I mean, you got to be able to win on early downs and then, get them in long down situations. And then I think offensively, it's about, being able to throw the football effectively on early downs. I think getting yourself, those quick hitting completions, the switch releases, maybe some slants, hitting it out in the flats, some screens, try to get yourself in a position where you're ahead of the sticks and then be able to, keep your drives sustained, run some clock, and then try to blend in the running game occasionally, because this is going to be a game where you're going to have to slow play this thing, slow it down, keep the ball out of Michigan's hands, try to sustain drives, which that's not going to be an easy thing to do against a Michigan defense that is so disciplined and multiple and keeps you guessing all the time.
Yeah, so we do have one commenter in chat who is predicting a Minnesota victory.
Oh wow!
I think, it may be a troll. Where I'm kind of wondering if it's one of our other cast of characters coming in under a different name, but Minnesota, has a lead according to Beetle, noted sports commentator Beetle. But okay, so I think that's a fair thing, and obviously, being at your place, and there was, I'm trying to think. It was either East Carolina or it was one of the early games when they were able to get Michigan backed up, right, to their two. It was very backed up, and they tried running it 3 straight times just to give the punter some more room. So if Minnesota is able to do that, if you have a good punter, and it turns into a Big Ten punt off, then that could be a situation where Minnesota finds a way to win. I'll be honest. Obviously, I think Michigan's probably going to win this one pretty comfortably. But it may be a situation like like a Rutgers, where maybe it takes a quarter, right? If Minnesota brings their A game and keeps Michigan from doing much scoring in the first quarter, it may take time. Joel Klatt made a comment, which I really love. It's like Michigan's like a boa constrictor, and you're like trapped with a boa constrictor. And sometimes it takes a little while for the boa constrictor to get you. But once it does, then you're you're done for, right? And maybe it's a situation where Minnesota does pretty well in the first quarter, and then we've got 40 miles per hour winds predicted. Oh man, well that could impact things a little bit.
Yeah, that could definitely change a lot. I hadn't saw that forecast. I know it's going to be in the 50s, dropping down into the mid 40s as the game goes on. So I definitely could see it potentially being windy, but Yeah, that's a huge
Wow.
factor. Special teams could be a huge. I always think it's a big play, anyways. The field position margin and how it correlates with winning. So, Minnesota has to start fast. That's another thing too. You got to come out, try to get early points, get off to a good start, and then try to just control that thing. I mean, Michigan's fifth in standard down success rate at 59% right now. So they are not a team that you get behind the sticks very often. So I think playing the run and then, not allowing that run game to get going, and the discipline has to be there defensively if Minnesota wants to have a chance to win this game.
For sure. Yeah. So with all that said, we do obviously really appreciate that you're able to come on with us today. Please let everyone in the audience know where they can find you, the things you've got cooking. Let people know how to get involved.
You can check out my site, gophersguru.com, $5 a month for the subscription package. Just posted an article on the website, detailed breakdown of Minnesota's run game, what they're able to do formationally against Louisiana, and how, Minnesota's run game might look simplistic to some, but there are some details each week that make a huge difference for them to get a numbers advantage. And that could be a huge factor in this game against Michigan when you got really good personnel that you're going against. You got to find every possible edge that you can get in the run game. So, watch for that on the website, and then the preview for the Michigan game be coming out soon. So all the little details and matchups that you need, and some statistical insights that could be interesting for people, all on the site, gophersguru.com.
So everybody, please go ahead and check that out. Follow him, gophersguru.com, get the subscription. And Daniel, really appreciate you taking some time to come by Michigan Wolverines Live.
Thanks. Enjoy the game, man. It'll be fun to watch.
Can't wait. Can't wait. Thanks, Daniel. Okay. Before we bring on our first caller, we have a caller. Yes, please go to gophersguru.com. Check it out. He's got some great insights. Obviously knows his football forwards and backwards. You could tell. So really great guy to have on, and thank you for that. Don't forget that it's football season. Get your Voice of College Football merch. We have a bunch of tremendous products. Like I always say, for the entire family. We have Michigan gear, and so I'm going to post the link to the Michigan merch store. Get yourself some t-shirts and some gear, some pint glasses. Yeah, it looks like we might be getting the brown jug back. Absolutely. Great to have Dependent Fanatic here. Our sponsor, Ticketsmarter.com. It is time to get your tickets. So get your tickets at Ticketsmarter.com. $10 off a purchase of at least 100 or for BIG, or BIG 20 for $20 a purchase off of 300. And of course, join our Patreon and YouTube membership to get exclusive content. So, I just talked about this. The Joel Klatt quote, love it. It's like being in a small cage with a boa constrictor is what Michigan's like. We saw that they are first in the country of opponent points per game, only allowing 6 points. So first out of all 133 teams in that metric, and in a bunch of others, obviously very good. So with all that said, is Michigan the best team in the country? And with that, we have our first caller. We got a friend of the show, Mike Ford, in the house. Hey, buddy, go Blue.
Hey, go Blue, Scoop. How you doing?
Doing good. I'm loving these guests coming on and talking ball. Clearly was looking at all the different angles and seeing how Minnesota would shake up.
Yeah, a lot of it was less ball and more trawl.
Well, there was some commentary in chat that was very very on the trawl side of things. But yeah, so what's your take on so obviously Georgia's still ranked number 1, Michigan number 2. I would say if you're going to pick a school that isn't Michigan to be number 1, I would probably pick Texas over Georgia right now. If the argument is they ain't, Michigan ain't played nobody, well, Georgia ain't played nobody either. If Auburn is the best, and they barely beat Auburn, I don't think they're that much better than Rutgers. So, and we beat Rutgers by a lot more. So I don't know. What's your take on it? What do you think about if Michigan is the best team in the country?
Well, right now I would put Michigan 1, Texas 2, Georgia 3.
Okay.
I honestly, I think if Jalen Daniels had played for Kansas and Texas still wins that comfortably, I'd probably have Texas 1, to be honest. But keep in mind that Jalen Daniels is all that's pretty much all Kansas has. They're kind of a one-man show. So
yeah, it's tough. Texas is obviously they have the big Bama win, and it seems like things are finally clicking for them. I'm not going to go as far as to say they're back yet until they actually get in, win a championship game and get to the get to the playoff. But it seems like that's where they're headed unless there's a big disappointment against Oklahoma or another team coming up.
And that would be fine because, I mean, we're going to know what Texas is really made of on Saturday. Because it looks like Venables finally got Oklahoma where he needs to be at. Because last year was a bit of a disappointment. I know he was his rookie campaign, but he's firing on all cylinders right now. And my thing about Texas, that Texas historically has dropped a game or two they have no business losing. I think it was last year they lost to Texas Tech, and they were better than Texas Tech last year.
Right.
So that's kind of a strike on them. Now, they lost to TCU. Now, I think they were a better team than TCU. Now, apparently not much better because TCU did end up making a championship game, but
right.
I'm kind of slow on Texas just from the fact that I'm wondering if they're gonna win the games they should win.
A stat that I'll point out, and we'll bring on our other caller in just a second. But one metric I looked at was a percentage of snaps where the team led by more than 14 points. So Michigan this year has led by 14 or more points for 62%, 0.17% of their snaps, which is better than every national title team recently except 2021 Georgia. That's the one exception. Granted, it's early, but I think that's notable.
And also, we're actually number 1 in the country in points per drive as well.
Points per drive and opponents, limiting opponent points too. Number 1 in the entire country on that. Joining us as well is a friend of the show, Moose. We're just calling you the Moose now. So what's up, buddy?
What's up?
Go Blue.
Go Blue.
Go Blue, man.
So what do you think about this? Yeah.
Which game? The Michigan one?
Well, so we're talking now about who's the best team in the country. And I'm pointing out, Mike and I are pointing out some of the Michigan points in its favor, like the fact that it's led, we've been leading by 14 plus points for 62% of our snaps, which is better than every national title team except 2021 Georgia. And Mike just pointed out number 1 in points per game, and in opponent points, limited points per drive, and limited in terms of the opponent points per game down to 6. So we're number 1 in the country on opponent points per game that we allow.
I mean, I know we haven't played top tier talent yet, but I mean, just from what I've seen, man, and I thought Michigan was really good last year. I honestly think Michigan's playing like national championship caliber football right now, man. I really do. I'm not just saying that because I'm a fan. Just from watching the games, I truly mean it. I think they are.
Hey, Michael, friend of the show, Michael Wheatley here. Michael Wheatley just posted, his rankings here. So looks like he's got Florida State ahead. So Florida State 1, Michigan 2, and Michael has a tough game ahead in a couple days against the Ohio State Buckeyes.
But John, you know what's going to be the argument every time we talk anything positive about Michigan? You know what the argument's going to be?
Ain't played nobody.
They haven't played anybody. They haven't played anybody.
Who's Georgia?
Okay, so are we the only team? So apparently Michigan is the only team out of 133 teams that don't play anybody? Apparently we're the only one.
Except for Georgia.
Right. Georgia gets a pass, though, because they won national championships, apparently.
Right.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, I don't hate Florida State being. I mean, I can understand why you pick Florida. There's an argument for Florida State. I don't. I personally have Texas. I would have Texas ahead. I would have Michigan ahead.
I think the Boston College game kind of took Florida State out of the conversation.
Yeah, that's why I'm not really touching Florida State. But I will say that I think that, and that's no disrespect to Georgia, I just don't think they're playing championship football right now. I think that if I had to pick two teams, it'd probably be Michigan and Texas that are playing the best right now.
Yep.
You might even throw Oklahoma in there too. Oklahoma you could probably throw in there too.
Now, let me ask you this. And sometimes I'll ask Tanner or Nelson when they're on, who was your impact player of the game? I want to know who the impact player of the season has been so far. Now we've had a little bit of a body of work here. Who do you think has really stood out to you? Mike, we'll go with you first. Who do you think has really stood out in your mind?
I'm sorry, could you repeat that? I was addressing the Maryland guy.
Oh. I was just asking who do you think in this season for Michigan? Who do you think has really stood out this season?
It's got to be Roman.
Yeah.
Because the biggest thing we had to hear is no wide receivers, no wide receivers, no wide receivers. Roman's looking like the guy now. And then obviously you say JJ. I'm just JJ kind of scares me because for all the talk about his recent, he's made some passes that kind of remind me of the TCU game. Like if you look at the helmet catch, that's a high risk throw. And then also when he the throw in the back of the end zone where he threw across his body, that's not a good throw. It worked, but it's
not a good throw, but he's the only one that can make that throw that I've seen.
But the thing is, I don't think we need JJ to be high risk, high reward. His job is just to kind of limit the turnovers. Make sure that we play ball control. Don't beat ourselves, kind of thing. But so far everything has worked. But like last year, everything worked.
I disagree. When you got a guy that's as talented as JJ, let him cook, man. Let him cook. Not be overly aggressive, but let him go out there and play, man.
Well, those passes against Nebraska were aggressive. That's a mild way to put it.
Yeah. So here's the danger with playing game management, ball control, Cade McNamara football, right? The danger there is when you get into a situation against Penn State, Ohio State, playoffs where you have been playing Cade ball the entire year, and then you have to play lights out. Maybe you're behind or you're in a dogfight against somebody like a Penn State because obviously we're going to Beaver, right? So that could be a situation. If he hasn't been doing that consistently throughout the year, and then you ask him to do that, then it could turn into TCU again, right? Where he hadn't had the reps as the gunslinger the entire season consistently, and then he was asked he had to do that, and then he threw picks, right? So it's kind of, I get what you're saying, Mike, and I don't fully disagree. I think if you can limit and do like Tom Brady style, throw the ball away when nothing's there, fine. But sometimes, just having those reps, making good throws. Jim Harbaugh said he's a gunslinger and we don't want to stop him from being that. And I think that's probably the right mindset. I don't know.
Well, I don't want him to be Cade. I mean, there's got to be a happy medium between being Cade and being JJ versus TCU and JJ versus Nebraska. Now, I want something similar to like Ohio State. He made calculated risks, calculated throws, calculated runs. He didn't really piss it away. I want that. I want the against Ohio State in the shoe last year, JJ. That's the level ground I want.
Yeah, sometimes JJ does get sometimes he does irritate me because, like you said, he needs to learn when to just get rid of the ball and throw it out of bounds. Sometimes, like for instance, the Bowling Green game, really on that third pick when he just looked like it was a frustration throw. He just threw it up for grabs and it got intercepted instead of throwing it out of bounds. I get what you're saying there, but you gotta let JJ, you gotta let him fling it, man, because like John was talking about, if we end up winning the Big Ten, if we do, I'm not saying we will, but if we do, we're gonna go to the playoffs again if we win the Big Ten title, and JJ needs to be ready. He needs to have those reps in, man. We don't want the same thing to happen as last year, so he needs to be ready.
I think that if we just played a conservative game, we beat TCU. My argument is that TCU did.
We just ran the ball.
Michigan beat Michigan.
I don't know about that.
We tried. We tried to be Michigan. The issue is that it wasn't working, right? So with Blake now, if Blake Corum had been healthy, that's a different story. But we had Donovan Edwards and Khalil Mullings trying to play the Michigan physicality, and Khalil Mullings got stuffed and fumbled, right? So we did try; it just didn't work.
I just think Michigan wasn't. I don't think they were prepared for that kind of defense. I don't think they played it all year. I don't think they were ready for it.
Well, that was a game where. That was a game where I would have liked to see, JJ make a few, like bootleg scrambles and things like that to kind of, stretch it more east-west.
I have an idea. So Jim Harbaugh obviously knows, Thomas Edward, Patrick Brady Jr. very well. And if you remember, there's still a fun YouTube video of them playing catch when Tom Brady came to visit. He is the master of throwing the ball away when nothing's there. And we saw it at every stop, including my Tampa Bay Buccaneers, who just had a great win, by the way, against the Saints, which I'm very, very, very happy about that. He threw that ball away. When there was nothing there, he threw it away. I would love to see him come just for a couple hours and work with JJ just on really getting that perception of when to throw it away. Because I don't think there's anybody better at it. Because he was very pocket passer. He was very statue.
Wouldn't that be cool to have Tom Brady show you the ropes? Oh man.
Well, I disagree. I mean, you ever heard of a guy named Aaron Rodgers? There's a reason why his touchdown to interception ratio is so high. If he doesn't have a guy that's 5 yards open, he'll just chuck it into the third row.
He's no Tom Brady though.
No.
Yeah, I mean Rodgers is hanging out with the Jets again. Just helping them out. He's kind of pseudo QB coach for Zach Wilson now while he's rehabbing. But Tom's just kind of chilling at one of his 50 mansions, and he's a Michigan alum, so why not give him a call, see if he'd be willing to stop by. But it's just a random idea, but I'm sure Kirk Campbell is more than equipped to teach.
Why don't we do one better, John? Why don't we get Tom Brady as our quarterbacks coach?
Hey. Well, when Kirk
That
Campbell
would take a lot of
becomes
pressure off Jim, wouldn't it?
when Kirk Campbell becomes the OC, when Sharon Moore gets a head coaching job, maybe then you call up. Although I think he has something like a $35 million a year contract with Fox that he's starting next year. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's not going to do that. I mean, there was a better chance of it now that he ditched the ball and chain, but I don't think that's going to happen. He's going to be the next.
Tom?
Yeah,
Tom Brady has a contract with Fox.
yeah.
Oh wow!
Starting next. Yeah, so starting next year, I think it's like $35 million a year with Fox Sports.
He's going to be the new.
Oh
Romo.
yeah, he's not going nowhere.
Yeah,
he's going to be the new Romo.
we do have a financial contribution from Bizzer, which are always interesting to decipher. In this case, it's a team called Michigan that be cheating. So
Yeah.
thank you again for your financial contribution.
Yeah, I hate those McNegan guys.
Yeah.
McNegan.
Yeah.
Oh, meat chicken. The ones that say meat chicken. I'm like, dude, how long did it take you to come up with that? Seriously.
Yeah. Are we back to the burger now? Is this what this is about? Is this about the burger?
They call Michigan meat chicken. I'm like, where the F did you get that from?
They've been calling us meat chicken for a long time. When they're not calling us Zishigan.
Yeah, I heard. Yeah,
Or Michigan. Or Michigan.
Or TTUN, or
or
whatever.
the B word again, the B again. They got some good ones.
Well,
thanks, Michael. There you go. Michael Wheatley is supporting us and saying Michigan is outscoring opponents 172-30. Do we have a Maryland alliance happening right here? Is that what's going on?
He's just trying to butter us up for the game in November.
Yeah. That's a tough final stretch, by the way. Penn State, and now that Maryland's good, and then Ohio State. That's like it's basically you have like Candyland. You're going from Candyland to the Dragon's Den in those final 3 games.
Yeah, I mean, what are the odds that? Because that happened last year too. With Illinois being our second to last game, nobody thought going into that game going in that season that Illinois would be a pain in the ass. But
Jesus.
Welcome back.
Well, yeah, so I hit the leave button on accident. I do that sometimes.
You've got to echo. Yeah, turn off the YouTube.
Can you hear it? Is it okay now?
Yeah, you're good.
Testing. Okay, we're good. What were you saying, Mike?
Huh? I'm just saying that I hate the fact that it seems like every year now our schedule is just dangerously backloaded. Like the important games we couldn't split up. I think it's just too much of a risk whenever you put in only one team between Penn State and Ohio State, because if that team becomes good, it just creates a scheduling issue.
Yeah. Well, at least nobody will be able to say we ain't played nobody after those 3, because that's a gauntlet. I know that the first 9 aren't a gauntlet, but those last 3 really, I mean, that'll really prove it's going to be another Big Ten East, meat grinder, and whoever survives basically gets to go forward.
Yeah, I just hate that every difficult game we have is in November.
But Mike and John, we haven't played nobody.
I might actually go to the Maryland game, because that one's it's not like like I've been meaning to go back up to see all the DC DMV area people anyway, and I enjoyed last time I went to Maryland Stadium, so maybe I'll go back.
Yeah, I remember when Maryland was kind of a nothing burger. I remember at one point I can't remember if it was the Durkin years or the pre-Durkin years. They had so many injuries at quarterback. They were starting like linebackers at quarterback.
Yeah, I wonder if that was. I don't think that was the year. So I went in 2017, and it was definitely one of the like one of those 38-3 type games. And I remember there being like 10 Maryland people in the stands by the end, because like most of the people who go to the Maryland Stadium, they're like when it's the Michigan game, there's so many DC Michigan alums that you see probably like 80% maize and blue in there.
Yeah, same with Rutgers. You get all these the New York, Michigan guys. They'll pack the stands more than any Rutgers fans.
Well, I'm telling you, man. I just got a gut feeling that Maryland might pull off the upset this Saturday, man. I'm telling you,
I have a feeling too.
Remember that, John? I was telling you, I don't think they're as good as I thought, but I don't know, man. I think I might. From what I've seen, they actually look better than I thought. So they're actually pretty good.
I'll be rooting for Maryland, 100%.
They have the talent to do it. And I think they have the better quarterback too.
They almost did last time. Like, do you remember the last? So I vividly remember watching that game because I was on the bus, heading out of the big house, and I had it on, and Talia was just lighting it up, and then obviously, unfortunately, he did have that injury close to the end of the game, but it was extreme. I mean, he was a warrior in that game. He was punching back at Ohio State, and that was when they had C.J. Stroud, who, by the way, has been doing pretty well at the Texans. I don't think that Kyle McCord is anywhere close to C.J. Stroud.
Mildly put.
So, with all that said, we do have one, and I'll take this will be the last call that I bring on, and this is we've got Dr. C in the house. Dr. C, thanks for calling Michigan Wolverines Live.
Hey, how's it going? How's everyone doing tonight?
Doing good.
Doing good, man. Doing good.
Awesome. Hey, I just called in. I was trying to get into the Big Ten show yesterday, but I wasn't able to.
Man. Yeah, what team do you root for? Michigan?
No, I'm actually USC/Arkansas fan.
Oh, right.
That's an odd combination.
Yeah, I lived in both states, so
what I had to do on that, because there were so many people who wanted to be on, I had to just kick out anybody who wasn't a Big Ten school, basically.
No,
it was the only fair
worries.
way to do it, because I was like, how the hell else am I going to pare the panel down except, okay, it's got to just be Big Ten. We got to say goodbye to the Bama person, the Notre Dame person. That was the only way I could think of. So
yeah, I was about a year early, right?
Yep, you're gonna be joining it soon, and that's very exciting. So what was on your mind?
Well, do we have to? I have some Michigan questions, but I also had some general questions, if that's okay.
Bring them.
Whatever's top of mind.
Okay. Well, this game coming up with Minnesota, I see no chance for Minnesota. And I don't see a chance for anyone to be competitive against Michigan until Penn State. Maryland. Do you think that's a fair assessment?
Yep.
So my fear is it happens a lot of times when you have these, it's going to be a month of really not getting motivated. Is there any chance of potentially Michigan State? That's what I fear. For teams that that are cruising, it's hard to get them motivated for these games. You're expecting 4 touchdown lead by halftime. Let's put the backups. Do you see anything in the next month happening like that, where potentially it could be a close game where it comes down to a field goal?
No. You're not going to have problems getting up for Michigan State. I'll promise you that right now, especially not after last year with their sucker punch move.
Yeah, and Michigan's they're not gonna put their backups in unless they have a good enough lead that they know they're going to win.
But I mean, Michigan State made it personal last year, so I think that this might be a little bit of If there's any team, including Ohio State, if there's any team that Harbaugh might run the score up on, it's going to be Michigan State.
Yeah,
Oh, hell
nobody's coming out of that game. I assure you, no one's coming out of that game.
You know, and keep in mind that Iowa just went to Michigan State, and with a backup quarterback, a third string wide receiver, I'm a second, their top wide receiver, a third string running back, their top tight end out, they still scored 26 points. Now, one of those was a kick return, but that kind of shows you this Michigan State team is terrible. So, on top of
that's what I was alluding to. Yeah, and Indiana had a good season. COVID year has it been that far when they had a pretty good season?
They just fired Walt Bell, their offensive coordinator. So that I'd say if there's going to be one team that might have a prayer, it would be Minnesota, because Michigan State, Michigan's going to want to run up the score against them after last year, and they're a freaking mess. Indiana is probably going to go 2-10, and they fired their OC after getting butt whooped against Maryland, by the way. I would say Minnesota's probably if I can think of one, it probably would be Minnesota, but again, that's probably unlikely.
And I would have figured between Nebraska and Minnesota, which would have given us a big problem. I would have said Nebraska, to be honest.
Yeah,
John. When Darrell says Michigan has a 1% chance to win the Natty, I think Minnesota has a 1% chance to win this game. Honestly.
I think Daniel was very realistic when he was on. I think he did a great job of laying it out. I think he was very realistic that it was going to be unlikely. And a lot would, he had the same answer kind of as John from Corn Nation last week, where basically like you've got to play a near perfect game and everything has to go right, basically. And if you want to have a chance.
Well, I mean, for span forward, better have a Gronk type stat line if they're going to even be in the competition for this game. I mean, we're talking like 11 catches for 185 yards and 3 touchdowns. That's what they. And I'm not even sure he's completely healthy right now.
Joel has a good point. I forgot Purdue. And Purdue obviously just had a pretty good win. So maybe they're the ones out of all of the teams. Obviously, I'm not counting the final three.
Man. Yeah, Purdue's kind of sneaky. Some games you're like, man, this team's really bad. And then, at the last game they play, you're like, wow, that was a pretty good win.
I'm sorry, but Wisconsin blew them out. They lost by 15 to Syracuse, and these are home games. And they lost to Fresno State. All these are at home, mind you. So, Am I worried about Purdue?
Fresno State's a good team, though, in their defense. Fresno's a pretty good team.
Oh yeah, they're a good team, but I mean they might be the best Group of 5 team out there right now. And the Syracuse win, the Syracuse loss doesn't look as bad now. They're 4-1. So I mean, these are 3 losses at home, but they're not the terrible teams. I don't see Purdue as an issue. I see Purdue as base. I want to make sure Michael Hogg's not in here. Okay, he's not. I see Purdue as basically Hudson Card and a bunch of guys.
Yeah, probably 5-7 will go this year. Is my prediction.
5-7 would be generous.
Yeah, Is Minnesota completely overlooked Northwestern last week? Do you think they were thinking ahead? Is that what happened last week? Or are they bad?
I think I was alone. I said that Minnesota would be like a 5-7 team this year. I think I was the minority opinion. I thought Minnesota would have a precipitous drop with no Tanner Morgan, no Mo Ibrahim. I thought that Minnesota was going to kind of dwindle back down into the doldrums. Now, I think a lot of people still had them as a 7, 8, even 9-win team like last year, but I just don't think they have. I think they lost way too much on the offensive side of the ball. I'll tell you that right now, and that was proved with Nebraska. They beat 13-10. So, take it for what it is. I don't think, and I do think Northwestern kind of punched above their weight class with beating Minnesota, but I still think that Minnesota is not going to be a good team this year.
What's been the most disappointing team this year? Is it
in the Big Ten?
In the Big Ten, or
in the Big Ten? Yeah.
Good question.
Either Northwestern or Indiana, probably.
I don't think not for those, because I don't think there was
State.
any expectation. I don't know.
Yeah, you
State.
could go Michigan State too. I'm sorry.
You know what? I'm going to say Iowa. And it's kind of weird for a one-loss team.
That's a good point because they had high.
Yeah.
I guess they had high expectations this year.
Well, this is a team that John had going 11-1. I had them at 8-4.
I did too. I had them 11-1.
They only lost one game, but that one game
it could
lost.
still happen. It could still happen.
Yeah, I guess anything possible, but I mean they've only lost one game.
Backup's not too bad. He's solid.
I still think they'll do better than 8-4. I just don't. It's tough to stick by 11-1 when half their offense is out.
Yeah, no, Kate out. I don't see it.
Yeah.
I thought that Iowa would at least be. I didn't have them winning, but I thought they would be competitive against Penn State. And Penn State, I mean, they just shut them down like I have not seen another team shut down in a long time.
Will probably win, even though they don't have a lot of competition now with Iowa, with Kate going down in Iowa. So,
and I would say probably second place for my disappointment would be Nebraska. I think there was a lot of hype coming in with Matt Rule coming in. The defense looked pretty good to start with, but then, and they talk about bringing in Jeff Sims from Georgia Tech, but he has just looked absolutely horrible this year. And I think that Nebraska probably went into the season with, at minimum, bowl aspirations, but that's starting to look a little bit worse day by day.
Well, Mike, that Nebraska Minnesota game, Sims was a turnover machine. I mean, Nebraska could have won that game if it wasn't for him.
It wasn't just
they could have been 3-1 when they played Michigan.
So let's go ahead and let's do predictions. Here's mine: 42 Michigan, 3 Minnesota. Because I think Michigan is really in a rhythm, and seems like JJ McCarthy in particular just gets super fired up when he plays at away stadiums. Obviously, we saw the 45-7 against Nebraska, so I could see a very similar score against Minnesota. What do you guys think as far as predictions?
I'll say 38-7.
Okay. Jace, Moose.
I'm going to say 56-3 Michigan.
Ooh,
damn!
Wow.
I just think it's a really, really bad mismatch. Minnesota is no disrespect to Minnesota, but
yeah, that would need to be a defense with the new clock rules. That would have to be like at least one defensive takeover, like probably pick 6, for that to happen. Dr. C, do you want to share? Do you want to give a prediction?
Yeah, I'm gonna go 41-14. I think it's gonna be a dominant win, but they'll get more than a field goal though. The Gophers.
Okay. That's fair.
I'm hoping that they keep it to 7 and under to keep that streak up, because we started the season with 5 games where we've scored at least 30 points and the opponent has scored 7 or less. And just to bring that up, the only teams that have ever done that is the 93 Florida State team, and it was either 78 or 79 Alabama team. Both those teams won national championships. So if you can keep up that streak, I like drawing these parallels where you have a certain stat that's kind of a measuring stick. That one's kind of a cute stat to point to. So that's why I want to keep it below 7.
All right. So before we do final thought and where can people find you if you want to share that, a couple of shows coming up. So tomorrow night at 8 p.m. Eastern, we'll do 30-Minute War on the Buckeye Mike channel with myself and Buckeye Mike. We go at it, no holds barred, and talk from the Michigan and the Buckeye perspective on that show. Saturdays after the game, we have Michigan Post Game Live with myself and Dre Artis, who is back, which is very exciting for this season. And he did say he's going to stop by this show now that it's after hours. So maybe we'll get Dre back on this show coming up in a week or two. So very exciting. And then obviously Mondays, we just had it yesterday, Big Ten Live. I do a show called the Ocho as part of Big Ten Live, where we have a panel like this with members of the Voice of College Football community from 8 to 10 Eastern. Coming up next on the Voice of College Football is Oregon Ducks Live with Exploring with Ben and a cast of characters at 10:15 p.m. Eastern. So I've got the link in the chat so people can start heading over there after this and hitting the like button. Just tell them John sent you. Just say John from the Michigan show sent you. And they can keep a tally of the Michigan support. But we'll start with Mike if you want to give a final thought for us.
Well, in honor of our USC guy, I will say that I'll be happy that we got the 4 Pac teams coming over. Now, one thing I really like is that I'm not sure if anybody in the chat has been to the USC channel. You should go; it's really fun. They draw a crowd. And one of the better things is that they draw people that you won't know because they are just loyal to USC and they don't really visit any of Mark's other channels. So whenever USC is among other schools, come the way of the Big Ten, you're going to see a lot of new names. So, get to know them, and go over there, check out USC. That's always a fun one. You got some characters over there.
Oh, yeah.
Get yourself a healthy dose of Tim Prangley. He's always fun.
That's one word for it. That's just one word for it.
Prangley Productions, absolutely. Moose, any final thoughts for us?
You can just find me on Twitter. You got my handle. I call it Twix now. I call it Twix.
Twix.
So, yeah. Twitter plus X is Twix.
It's pretty funny. That's pretty funny.
I will say this is a stretch now for Michigan where they need to not get complacent and get cocky and arrogant. Because they got 4 games coming up, and let's be honest, they're 4 games that Michigan should win pretty easily. But you can't get complacent. You can't get out of character and slack off because you know what happens when you do that. Michigan's done that before in the past. So as long as Michigan just keeps their eye on the prize and handle the business, we will go into Happy Valley 9-0, and we'll be ready for that game. So that's all I got, John. Go Blue.
Awesome. Go Blue. And finally, Dr. C, final thought, and if you want to share where people can find you.
Well, they can find me in parts unknown. I'm pretty much off the grid, other than, just being a college football maniac. And I can't wait for the Trojans to come into the Big Ten here pretty soon and with the most explosive offense. And hopefully we'll have a defense next year that can, be marginal. And that would be an improvement. So looking forward to it.
Yeah, man. Listen, that's an elite offense. And if you can get your defense shored up more, then I think you can have a solid end to your season. But yeah, Colorado being allowed to score 41 is that might be you might be in for a rough second half here because I had you guys as a potential playoff team coming into this year, but Grinch needs to make some quick adjustments.
Well, I think the adjustments need to be him, as in them, replacing him.
Yeah. Absolutely. Dr. C, thanks for coming back and being able to contribute to tonight's show. So appreciate you.
Absolutely. My pleasure. Thanks for letting me on, even though,
Absolutely.
I'm a college football maniac, love all conferences, and I'm excited for your team. I'd like to see someone win that's not in the SEC, actually. So
wouldn't that be great? That would be really something. I would enjoy that too. Thanks, Dr. C.
All right. Take care. Bye.
Later. All right. So coming up next, like I said, is Oregon Ducks Live at 10:15 p.m. Eastern. Couple of final housekeeping notes before we wrap here. Please hit the like button if you haven't already. Subscribe and share with a friend. We do have the merch store, so get your Voice of College Football merch. Mike Fort, who was just on, usually shows off his t-shirt. So check out the Voice of College Football merch. Join our Patreon and become a YouTube member. We have our ticketsmarter.com. Just help us out in whatever way it makes the most sense. Send a super chat. Subscribe. We are still 1,000 subscribers behind Ohio State. That's not acceptable. I need you to each get like 100 people, 100 of your friends, to subscribe to Michigan Football, the Voice of College Football, so that we can beat Ohio State. You ask yourself, what are you doing to beat Ohio State today? That's a way that you can all help beat Ohio State today, is everybody get 100 of your friends to subscribe to Michigan Football, the Voice of College Football. And with all that said, my name is John D'Adamo, and I was your host today. Please follow me on Twix, as Moose says, John D'Adamo on Twix. Here we go. There's that. You post that right here. Boom. If you haven't followed me yet, please do. Thank you, Keith. That means a lot. I appreciate that. We did. We'll be clipping this, and there is, of course, our interview that we did with Daniel House from Gophers Guru, where he really did a great job of breaking down Minnesota football offense, defense, and what we can expect when we travel to TCF Stadium for the away game. Next up, as I said, is Oregon Ducks Live with Exploring with Ben and his co-hosts, which is at 10:15 p.m. Eastern. Just head on right over there and hit the like button. Oh, thanks. And of course, some great support from our resident Buckeye troll, Stephen Cherry. Thank you for coming on and gracing us with your commentary. It's always appreciated. So anyway, Oregon Ducks Live coming up at 10:15 p.m. Eastern. Quack. Get your dose of quack in about an hour. Get yourself a beverage. I'm gonna go walk my dog and chill for a bit, and then I'll be watching Oregon Ducks Live. And until next time, as always, go blue. Enjoy the games. See you around.